Welcome to the ABOP podcast. ABOP is the Alliance of Black Orchestral Percussionists, a nonprofit organization that focuses on mentoring future generations of Black percussionists. My name is Raynor Carroll. I am an ABOP founder and the former principal percussionist with the Los Angeles Philharmonic. Thank you for joining me on this podcast. In this episode, my special guest is the new Assistant Principal Percussionist with the LA Phil, Wesley Sumpter. Wesley has joined us on a podcast in the past as a mentor in ABOP's mentorship program. This time around, we will discuss his new position with the LA Phil, the audition, his preparation, and his journey. Wesley, welcome back to the ABOP podcast.
Oh, Raynor, thank you for having me, man. Always a pleasure to be here.
Well, it's great to have you and Assistant Principal Percussionist, LA Phil. What can I say? How does it feel?
Everybody's been asking me that question for the past 2 weeks, and I still really haven't processed it. Fun fact, today is officially my first day.
You signed the contract.
Signed the contract, negotiated some other things, but I got what I wanted, and today is officially my first day.
And they got what they wanted. A great young musician. And I have to say, to those that, we're not doing video, it's just audio, a fantastic young Black man. I have to say that. And that's important. We were talking a little bit earlier, but to pass the baton on after a 9-year absence from me to Wesley, it's a great feeling, man. It's great. I'm so proud of what you've done and achieved. What can I say? You're what ABOP is about. A Black person being offered a position in a symphony orchestra, a major symphony orchestra, one of the world's great orchestras. And like I said, I was there for 33 years, so I can attest to that. Your journey is what we would love to duplicate many times over. What an amazing accomplishment. Once again, congratulations, Wesley.
Man, thank you, Raynor. And like I was saying earlier, before we started, having people like you and my former teacher, Timothy Adams Jr., and other mentors like Javon Gilliam, just having you all in my corner has really been a very special part of all of this. And I'm just so happy to have you all with me here. When you ask how I feel about the audition or how I feel about winning it, it hasn't really set in because this doesn't really feel like a solo achievement for me. Me coming up in the Atlanta public school system and being a part of that and being mentored by band directors from all different schools in the Atlanta public school system at that time, like really informed how much of a community effort all of this is, and just even people who may not even play music, but just the words of encouragement along the years and saying, oh, you inspired me to continue to work hard because I see you working hard. That means a lot to me too, though, like everyone has a hand in this. So I really just am immensely grateful for everybody that's been a part of this and people who I've experienced on the stage, off the stage, in passing, even students I've taught or master classes I've given, whatever it may be, all of that informed those days auditioning here and every other audition I took too,
Yeah.
So thank you.
Yeah. Well, from everyone, I can say you're welcome, you're deserving, and we're thrilled to have you reach that point where it's not the end. I'd say it's like phase 2 of your journeys. You've had your journey, which we will talk about how you got here, but it's the new journey now of writing this machine. And this machine, they put out a lot of music, and you kind of know that because you've been playing there for a while. But now you're on salary. I mean, you're part of the roster, so it goes to a different level now, which I know you're going to enjoy. So anyway, before we talk about the journey, let's talk about the audition.
Absolutely.
And let's start with the day of, as in when you arrived. So what time was your audition, and what time did you arrive?
So I was pre-advanced to the semifinal round. That was mostly because in the previous audition that your former student and my former roommate, David Riccobono, won, I placed in the finals for that. So that was taken into account when my resume was sent in. And
Right.
Being a part of the fellows program also helps as well in that endeavor. So prelims were on a Monday and Tuesday. And then semis were on a Wednesday after they had a double rehearsal at about 4 or 4:30. So we get here, there are about 12 of us. Yeah, I think there were 12 of us in that round. And, we draw numbers. We all go to our individual warm-up rooms. I already have a whole plan in my mind of how I do things. I have it sketched out like a month in advance of what I'm going to do when I'm at home on the practice pad, warm up a little bit, get the hands just going because you never know what can happen. You know, you get to the hall and they say, "Oh, you're number one," or "Hey, we had someone cancel, so we're gonna have to push the audition up a little bit further." Or it may be the opposite. You waiting around for like 2 or 3 hours and then you play. But they had it go. It went along pretty well, and it wasn't that long of a round. It was a part of the Bach piece we had to play, which was the Prelude and Presto for the E minor Lute Suite. Schumann 3 on xylophone, I believe part of the Delecluse 6 etude on snare drum, and some other things. Like it's all kind of foggy to me. I have it all written down. I can't really remember much of it. But you know, you get there, you get your assigned warm-up room, and you hear everybody just going crazy in their rooms, blasting through everything. But you know,
Right.
I had a whole plan on my sheet of, you know, you got to play. You're gonna go on your metronome, look at each piece, make sure you get your tempos. Then you're going to work on starting each piece. Then you're going to start backwards. The last thing you play in the warm-up room is the first thing you play on stage. That whole thing, just so you get a nice progression. You already once you look at the list, you say, what kind of picture am I trying to paint here? So dynamically, what's my loudest excerpt? What's my softest excerpt? What's my fastest excerpt? What's my slowest one? Which one is going to show my touch on this instrument the best? Or how can I show that across all of the instruments, right? And I would practice that when I would do mock auditions. I would have people make a list and I'd give myself 10 minutes to really try to break it down just so I could do that while, you know, at an audition under pressure. So then you go to an on deck room and, you know, you don't know how much time you're going to have, but I always use my watch. That's just like a pro tip I've been doing the past couple of years. It's like if they say you get 15 minutes in a room, I put 10 minutes on because a lot of times it moves. And if I get done before they come back, at least I've gone through my entire routine of setting myself up, starting each piece, maybe miming a few things,
Hmm.
spot checking like one spot in each excerpt 4 times, specifically 4 times, not at tempo, but 4 times just so the mechanics are there and it, you know, they set in. The nerves are kicking in, so you're like, okay, to calm myself down, let me know that I can approach these very comfortably. And then right before I go on stage, you know, I say a few things to myself, and as I walk out, I take notice of the room and how it sounds as I'm walking and as I'm setting up and taking note of how far or how close the committee is.
Were you on stage, by the way?
Yes, we're on stage and the committee sat way in the audience. And I mean, Raynor,
Uh-huh.
you know, you already know how it's set up. So they sit in the second orchestra section,
Right.
behind that first wall, but like pretty far back because they have to set the
Uh-huh.
screen up and then they have to sit behind. So
Yeah.
taking those things into account, understanding, you know, snare drum has to be very clear. You know, all of these instruments have to be very, 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 very in the right spot because the acoustics and the distance are going to muddy up a lot of those things.
Yeah.
And really just making sure the same amount of attention to detail I had in the practice room for those weeks or months leading up to any audition, making sure I have that same mentality when I'm on the stage. You know, paying close attention to every detail in every excerpt at that time, you know.
Right.
And then once I finish, a couple of years ago, I started doing this thing where as soon as I finish, I step away from the instrument and I give myself like just, and then I come back to the next excerpt. And I
Hmm.
practiced timing it to where I didn't take too long, but I also didn't rush into the next excerpt.
Right. Let me
Yeah.
ask you, were
Mhm.
the instruments positioned where they would be in the orchestra, or were they positioned more stage front?
It depends. And this is one of the only orchestra auditions I've done where they do this. So even for David's audition, what they did was that was assistant timpani. So all the percussion instruments were lined up in the front, across the front of the stage where the
Mhm.
violins would sit. But then the timpani were set in the back of the stage where they usually would be. Joe wanted to, you know, see what it would sound like in the hall, what you would sound like, and give Gustavo that picture. There were some clarity things for every candidate during that audition because of the distance, but yeah. So for this one, the assistant principal audition, the only instrument that was back there was bass drum. So Matt had us play in the super finals specifically. We didn't play bass drum in the screen final round, but in the unscreened super final round, he had me play 2 excerpts from Mahler 3. Not the main excerpt at the beginning, but the 2 shorter ones, 2 of these shorter excerpts later on. And I mean, it was way in the back of the stage next to the choir risers and the committee's all the way out. So taking that into account, but everything else was pretty close up front on the
Hmm.
stage. So yeah.
So, self-evaluation after you've played, how do you think you did?
Afterwards, I thought, yeah, I kind of take an honest assessment and say, okay, did I play too loud? Did I play too soft? But this time around, it all felt good. I felt like I hit a sweet spot, tempo, time wise, maybe a few touch things just because the hands, you're nervous and like, but consistently didn't miss any notes, which I was very happy about. I thought I was very clear in my dynamics and things. So I'm just taking those notes into account if I make it to the next round, right?
Yeah.
And then later you get the email and you make your next decision after that, right? Yeah.
So they had you play, would you say with this round, maybe 10 minutes?
Yes, I'd say probably a little bit shorter than that, probably like 7 or 8, because there were so many of us, and the time constraint for them was, they had those rehearsals in the morning, and then I think some other things were going on later in the evening where some people had to be used for things, so they really condensed it down very, very short. I mean, the
Yeah.
prelim round was only 5 minutes. I only knew that because I had friends take it, and I believe
Hmm.
that that's because they had so many candidates apply and be
Yeah.
accepted,
Yeah.
So.
So were you saying that they actually send you an email to let you
Mhm.
know if you've advanced? Wow, things have really changed.
It depends. Yeah, the Atlanta Symphony does that. The last couple times I've auditioned for them, which I actually did a timpani audition for them earlier this year in June, and that's how they do it. You play, and then you just leave, and that way they can take their time to deliberate and whatever, and then you get the email with the information, and you find. And actually, for the candidates, I think that's better as well because then you don't have everyone stewing in their emotional
Right.
stress. You
Yeah.
know.
Yeah. So were you still in the hall at the time?
No, I left. I
Oh, you were
immediately.
already gone.
Oh yeah,
Okay.
once I finished, I packed my bag and I go. Nope, got out of there.
And the next round would be the next day.
Well, that's the tricky part. No, because the next day they had a dress rehearsal and a concert, so there
Mm.
wasn't enough time to fit a percussion final in there. Maybe if it was violin or something, maybe. But since like they'd have to break part of the stage down and put all the
Yeah.
equipment up,
Yeah.
they decided
Yeah.
to give us a break on Thursday and then have the finals on Friday morning since there's no rehearsal, just a concert in the evening. So really taking that day off, like as a true day off for your mind and
Mm-hmm.
maintaining that emotional stress down, for that one day and not necessarily thinking too much about anything. I didn't go practice a bunch. I just kind of did a few things on a pad, went through my music, played some Bob Becker's xylophone exercises, went over some of the marimba stuff, and that's it. Like I just kind of
Mm-hmm.
kept it very easy, very relaxed, really just trying to trust that work I did. And then so Friday morning, we played the screened final round. For those that don't know, the way the LFL does it is you have a screened round in the prelims, semis, and the final round. And then after that, those in the screened final then get advanced onto an unscreened final. The reason why it's unscreened is because you have to do section playing. And it gives the section and the committee a better idea of how you will fit in with the section. And so that Friday morning was a screened round at 11 o'clock. The screen final was even shorter than the semi round, to be honest, which I
Mm-hmm.
was very surprised about. I mean, we didn't play any marimba. We played Scheherazade Movement 4, Schumann 3 on snare drum right afterwards. Porgy and Bess on xylophone. John Williams's Close Counters of the Third Kind on glockenspiel. And then Dance Bohème on tambourine. And then Finlandia on cymbals. It was very quick. It's very, very quick. And then we go in our warm up rooms, we wait, and then personnel manager comes in and gives you the thing that says, okay, here's the super final round. And the super final round was like 25 minutes. So that was one of those things where you kind of I had to lock in mentally and say, okay, you have to give yourself all of this time. So you have to make sure you're focused on each thing as you're going, but make sure you take those breaks as you're transitioning between instruments. That's your break. That's
Right.
your way to go, whoo, bring the temperature down a little bit.
So let me make sure I got you straight.
Hmm.
From the final round to the super final round, there is a cut.
There is a cut, yes.
There is a cut. Yes,
Yes.
of course. So
And
you
yeah.
said, if you don't mind me asking numbers,
Yeah.
there were maybe 12 in the final round
What, 12 in semis, and then of those 12, six of us in the screen final.
and the unscreened?
Four. Because they were
Four.
hiring
Okay.
for two positions, so they
Right.
wanted to make sure they had enough candidates. And they were nice about it this time. They just came around to each individual warm room and let people know who was advancing and who wasn't, just to
I
make it
see.
easier.
Right. So then you go to the super finals.
Right. Well, The screen final, that was my biggest hurdle because again, I had all of these emotions from the previous audition in this orchestra, which was in 2022, of not being able to get past. I couldn't get past the screen final.
Mm.
I got past semis, and then I was like, oh, get past the screen final, and I can like get to the unscreen final. Couldn't get it. So I had to do a lot of work mentally the days leading up to it to make sure that I was in the right headspace to just do what I needed to do and not worry about all of that. And so that screen final I played, I felt so in the moment I felt so good about it. And even thinking about it later, I was like, yeah, that was great. Like from the accessories to cymbals to the delicacy of the snare drum stuff on Scheherazade, the touch
Yeah.
on Porgy, the Close Encounters really making that sing and be very melodic. Like I felt very in the zone, in the pocket for that.
So how did you accomplish that? Because that's an issue for a lot of candidates when they have a past that they have
Hmm.
not been able to overcome. So how
Hmm.
did you do that this time? How did you get this positive attitude going into the unscreened super final?
The first thing is looking back on my professional experience up to that point, playing in the LA Phil, the Atlanta Symphony, San Francisco National Symphony, doing chamber music, doing the music things, and giving myself the confidence to know that I am a good musician. I am a quality musician because of the study that I put in, the work that I put in. You know, I'm not here just for fluff. I am actually on stage because I am supposed to be on stage. I get called for these gigs because people enjoy what I do and I contribute in a very meaningful and artistic way, you know? And I had to learn to say that about myself. You know, a lot of times we get so caught up in trying to be, well, I do. I get so caught up in trying to be as humble as possible because I don't want to come off as arrogant or anything. So for years, I had to really change my mindset around that because my humility could be debilitating. It could prevent me from bringing out the best qualities of my musicianship because I don't want to be seen as like, oh, he's doing too much. Why is he doing all that? When whatever I do actually comes from a very informed place. And that's something I got from Tim because people would see him play timpani and make jokes, and he's like, "No, none of this stuff is, as he would say, affectitious." And he would say, you know, every move or every motion that I make is for a specific part of the music because I am a very well studied musician. The score requires this, the instrument requires this, the way it fits into the ensemble, the hall. So I took that mindset to myself and said, okay, I know what I'm doing. I've played most of these pieces with a professional group. I know what to do. Now the goal is how do I make the instruments sing? And that's all I thought about for this audition in particular, and Atlanta Symphony in June, which was principal timpani. I was like, how can I make these instruments just sing and just get people attached to fall in love with the sound of the snare drum, the sound of the cymbals, the sound of the timpani? You know, how can I attract people to that? You know?
Yeah. That is the essence of what the panel is listening for. Music.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think it starts there.
Yeah.
It starts there. So that was the biggest. I took my mind off of execution
Right.
because I've done all that work. I did all of that work for that. I've done the repetitions. I've broken this stuff down with a metronome, off a metronome. I've recorded myself, played for people. I've done everything I can. So now just let it breathe, right? Focus on what you're doing and be conscious of what's happening around you, but just let it breathe. So those are the things I was telling myself. I actually went on a number of walking meditations throughout the week. And anytime my mind wasn't right, like I'd finish a walking meditation for like 30 minutes. And even after those 30 minutes, if I didn't feel confident, I'd go back and walk some more. So some of them would be 30 minutes. The longest one was 2.5 hours. I just walked in my neighborhood in South Pasadena, went to a park, just kept walking, talking to myself, really speaking life into myself, and really, what would I say to a student? What
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
what I was doing. What would I say to my student? You know. And so when I got on stage, it just all kind of shed off of me, like water on a duck's back. It just went, and I said, "Oh, okay, great. And now I can play." Because even in the warm-up room leading up to it, it was still kind of like this, you know,
Yeah.
just kind of all out. Yeah.
Yeah. Would you say this is something that just came with your maturity?
What do you mean?
Well, the experience that you had in the past at the auditions that you
Hmm.
weren't quite there, it seems like it was definitely a mental thing in getting to this
Hmm.
final round. So it's your experiences over time is part
Yeah.
of your maturity and it allowed it to happen.
Yes.
As a
Yes.
younger player, I would say we tend to doubt ourselves more, but as we perform and go through different situations, we learn and we grow with it.
Yeah. And then to piggyback on that, another thing I did specifically before the unscreened final, I thought back to the first time I ever made finals in an audition was 2019 for the Atlanta Symphony, my hometown orchestra, and it was for Assistant Principal Timpani. And back in those days, it wasn't that long ago. But the final rounds were always unscreened. And so at the time, Robert Spano was the music director, and then the committee was like 9 other people. And I remember that final, I was scared out of my mind. And I'm going between, I thought I played very well, and I got comments back. I was qualified, by different committee members and whatever. But thinking back on it, I remember, I mean, I just kind of played everything, didn't look at anyone. I just kind of, had this frantic energy in my face and in my body language. And I feel that that might have been the thing that might have turned people off or whatever. And so in this one, I said, Wesley, just play it like it's your senior recital. Play it like it's like the last concert you're ever going to play for anybody. And I had a moment of clarity where I said that to myself and I said, wow, I know what that would feel like. I would leave it all on the stage. Don't worry about the notes. Just play. Play everything the way you want to play it. And if they're not buying it, whatever. Like there's nothing I could do about it. Literally nothing I could do about it. Just address the instrument and the music in the moment. Express yourself. Be free. If you want to end this Bach with your hand all the way up like this, like you just finished like a concerto, do that. If you want it, like whatever it is, like, and I mean, because it's a long round, so you have to really keep them engaged through all of that, all these different instruments. Some of it they're not going to understand because they're not percussionists. They're going to listen to Prokofiev 5 on snare drum and go, okay. They're going to hit Nutcracker on tambourine and say, okay. Right. So that's what I told myself. I thought back to a past failure and said, I don't want to do that. But I know how to fix that right now because I've done it on stage so many times. So to answer your question, yes, that maturity of the experience definitely helped. I leaned on that very heavily for this audition, specifically in that moment.
And we know with great results.
Absolutely.
So you play, no screen. And did you play any repertoire with the section?
I did. So just to give everyone a glance of what the round looked like, I had to play the second half of the Bach Prelude and Presto, the Presto section, and then this almost impossible marimba part for this Gabriela Ortiz piece that we've played here a number of times in the LA Phil. And for those two things to start the round, if you don't know, that is a lot.
Yeah.
I mean, you're coming out pedal to the metal, just guns blazing, just what? Okay, right? And then all of a sudden you go to snare drum and you play the second movement of Prokofiev 5, right? And then the last movement of Prokofiev 5. No xylophone, Pines of Rome, the opening on Glockenspiel. 3 excerpts from Leonard Bernstein's West Side Story. And then what else? Oh, so then we go to accessories. Tambourine was one of the Nutcracker excerpts, scene number 4. It wasn't Trepak, it was something very similar to that, but much shorter. And then cymbals was Scherzo Capriccioso by Dvorak, and then 2 excerpts from Mahler's Third Symphony, and then section playing was Tchaikovsky's Fourth Symphony, the very ending. And that is when Joe Pereira, principal timpanist, he comes over and plays timpani. Matt Howard, principal percussion, plays cymbals. I play bass drum, and that's how it goes. And then so you play, they tell you thank you. Take a bow if you want. I took a bow because I felt good about it. So, again, senior recital, man. Senior recital. I gave those folks a performance.
Let me ask you about the Tchaikovsky. That was Gustavo conducting, or was there piano accompaniment?
No. He defected to whatever Matt and Joe wanted to do. And so he's sitting in the audience, I think, listening for just the complete sound of battery and timpani, making sure that the levels of it are together, and if they needed me to adjust, I could. But no, Joe just counted us off for 2 bars, and then we play, and then we're done. And then I'm listening and feeding off of the energy, but making sure that I'm confident in what I'm contributing. Because I'm sure that most people will feel like, oh, I'm playing bass drum. I need to make sure I balance with the timpani, but play under the timpani and not push the cymbal player. It's like, well, the bass drum is needed. It's a voice that's needed in that section. So if you have a good bass drum sound, being confident, understanding what the drum is doing in the moment so you can actually play it well. So yeah, that's what the section playing was, and that's the conclusion of that entire round.
By
So
any chance, did you have an opportunity to play that with the orchestra?
yes, I did.
Oh,
Like
great.
2 months
There
before
you,
that, actually.
that helps. That helps. Yeah.
Oh yeah, and it was
Yeah.
with Matt and Joe.
There you
Um,
go. Yeah.
so that was the easiest part of the entire thing for me. You know,
Great. So then you take your bows.
take my bows, take all my stuff off stage. I go in my room, and I got all this frantic energy, so I start padding. I start take a pair of sticks and I
Yeah.
just start practicing on a pad. Just
S- So I
you know,
ask you the same. How did you feel about this long round
oh
overall?
man, some of the best playing I've ever done in my life.
There you go.
They just it made sense. I could feel that they appreciated what I did, but I know for a fact it didn't matter what happened after that. I know I gave everything I had.
Yeah.
It was one of those moments. It's like one of those moments people tell you stories like that, and you're like, you don't believe it. But then like when you experience it, you're like, yes, this is possible to feel
Yeah.
that way, you
Yeah.
know? So yeah.
So did you have a long wait? Were you first up or were you last up? Was it a short wait?
No, it was a long wait. I was number two. And so we ended up starting the screen final went from like 11 to like noon, 12:15-ish. And then they deliberated and then they give us our papers for super finals, excuse me, and they go, okay, so they want to start before 1 o'clock. And I'm like, okay, I'm number two of four. So, and you're just like, what is happening, you know? So then I finished, and then I waited for about another hour because we still had two other candidates, and then they had to deliberate. And then 3:30, because I remember looking at my watch, I was like, okay, they're done. 3:30. So at 3:30, I get the knock on the door, and then they they come in and they go, okay, so they want you to come back to play cymbals and snare drum, and nothing else. Just bring a pair of sticks, and the cymbals will be on stage. I'm like, okay, cool. We'll see what happens. Great. And then I walk out on stage and everybody's clapping. Congratulations.
Oh, that's mean. That's
Yeah.
mean.
Oh man. And I had heard that they do that with everybody when they like tell them that they've been employed, but I was like,
Right.
I'm not taking any chances. So mentally I'm going in, I'm ready to go. And then they open the door and Gustavo was like, ah. And that was such a beautiful. I have to send you the video of that, man. It's such a beautiful moment. Like Dan Song, for those that don't know, he's the vice president of the orchestra, and I call him a friend. He's been very supportive over the years. He took a video of me walking on stage and hugging Gustavo and talking to the rest of the section. It was a really big moment for me. Really proud of that. That was
Absolutely.
very special.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, wasn't there, but I'm sure you deserved it, man. Very,
Yeah.
very
Thank you.
proud of you, man.
Thank you.
And it's too much to hit you at once, right? There's the
Yeah.
relief, there's the awe, as in you're kidding me. And
Yeah.
all of these emotions and everybody's coming up to you and you're like, wait, well, what's going on
Right,
here?
right. I'm thinking, this is a moment I envisioned for the past 7, 8 years, and it happened. I'm thinking I'm gonna start crying or like,
Hmm.
bawling. Nothing happened. I'm like, all right, okay, cool,
Yeah,
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 all right, I'm
yeah,
gonna go home now.
yeah,
Thanks,
yeah, yeah. Yeah, there's too many things going through your head and, yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
So
that's amazing. So you said you signed today.
yes.
What are the details of your position as being assistant? What will you need to do? What are your duties?
So management and I and Matt have agreed that since this is a new position, that they are going to leave it up to Matt and I to decide what we decide to do. And then once I get tenure and we go through this entire year and seeing how it works, then I'll be able to give them like very concrete details about, okay, this is what is actually happening. But Matt and I have decided to where, we're co-principals. We'll split duties evenly. And whenever he's off, I'm on. When we're on together, he will still handle part assignments and equipment rentals and stage diagrams. And, if he needs me to provide support, I can do that. Equipment maintenance is a big thing because we use everything. Like I literally went to Guitar Center yesterday to grab two kick drum heads because we're doing like a John Adams piece on this tour, and just in case if they break. So just really helping each other. When he doesn't have time for something, I'll pick that up. If I don't have time for something, he picks that up. So just making sure it's as equitable as possible, even with the way we assign things on stage, and just making sure the health of the section is the most important thing. And this is a very interesting time for us because Jim Baber will be retiring in January. And so we'll be down one percussionist, and the person that got the section percussion position, Andres Pichardo, who's assistant principal in the Detroit Symphony, he won't be able to start until the summer. So from now, basically from January already all the way until the summer, we're going to be short staffed. Because David Riccobono, who is assistant timpani, he plays more timpani than he plays percussion. Just that's the way he and Joe's contracts are. So we're just expecting him to do more of that. So it'll just be Matt and I, and then we have a new percussion fellow, Jeremy Davis, who's doing a phenomenal job. But the contract for the fellows is to protect them from being overworked and abused,
Right,
by the
right.
orchestra.
Yeah,
And so he has mandatory weeks off, and he's taking auditions. He's in my position. He's already
right,
getting ready for Pittsburgh Principal Percussion is coming up, San Diego, and all these other things that are coming up. So we want to
right.
make sure he has time off and has the time to actually make this experience what I made it for myself, whatever he wants to do. So it's essentially Matt and I. So,
Yeah.
and we've talked about what that's going to be. We both are going to do a good amount of the heavy lifting together. And so those are the details of the workload specifically. Yeah, so it seems to be a good deal for now. I
Well,
could,
that's great, and it's great that administration finally added a fourth percussionist. That's something that I asked for when I was there, but it just obviously never happened.
yeah.
And the reason I don't want to say that the section I was in at the time was lazy. I think you would say, based on the repertoire we do, you can't be lazy in that
Oh,
orchestra. But
no.
that was my point. With a section of three plus timpani, with the repertoire that we did, and as I understand, they still do, you always need just about once
Yeah.
or twice a month at least, you need at least one extra, if not two or three.
Hmm.
So I'm glad it finally came about, and obviously more than thrilled that you're there now. But until Andres gets there, you're going to be using the extras as before, because that's the nature of contemporary music. It's not
Hmm.
usually timpani and one or two percussionists. It's at least three or four. So,
Right,
yeah,
right,
yeah.
exactly. So, but I'm looking forward to it, man. It's gonna be a good time. So,
Well, buckle your seatbelts, man. So now that we got through the day, let's back up. Tell us a little bit about your preparation. And I know you've done several auditions this year itself. So
Mhm.
again, thinking of some of our younger listeners, some of the proteges, what are some pointers you would offer in your preparation?
I would say before you even think about applying to an audition or seeing when the date of it is or what the repertoire is, you need to understand how much time you'll have to practice. Like, what is your, how do I say this? What is a good amount of time that you know you have to practice on a daily basis? Let's and be realistic with yourself. Don't say, okay, once this audition comes out, I'm gonna practice 6, 8 hours a day. And it's like, okay, as a working adult, you will not have 6 to 8 hours a day. You just won't have it, especially me as a freelancer doing everything in this city and other cities alike. You don't have that amount of time. So I know for a fact I can always get a good 4 hours in every day. So the list comes out, I look at it, and I say, okay, how can I split this to where I can get my 4 hours a day and touch each accessory instrument every day, snare drum, and then one of the mallet instruments every day? And I break it up to where I split the list in half, like an A day, B day. That's something I got from listening to Parker Lee, who's the one of the timpanists in the Metropolitan Opera Orchestra in New York. He talked about that splitting a list in half and having an A day and B day. That way you're not overwhelmed and you can still hit everything for a good amount of time. And I do that and I get very, very, very detailed about. I have my practice logs, but they're in my car, but they can't see it anyway. But I brought every practice log I've had since I moved to LA. Not the ones from undergrad. Like I have a bunch more, but I mean, it's a stack about this big, you know. For those that can't see, it's about like an 8 inch high stack of notebooks and they've changed over the years. And I before every audition, I go back and I look at all of my practice logs and see if there's anything helpful that I can continue to do,
Hmm.
or if there's anything that needs to be taken out that's either superfluous information or something that's not really helping me or it's distracting me from something. So for this one, I get very, very meticulous and very detailed. So let's say I want to practice snare drum. This is just one example. Delacluse 6 was the etude for snare drum in this. I've broken that etude down so much to where I have it broken down in themes. So theme A, theme B, C, and then A prime, and then and then the coda at the end. So then I say, okay, in section A, bars 1 through 5, I am going to do 10 minutes of work on consistent grace note spacing in my roughs and my flams. 10 minutes on that. And at the dynamic of mezzo piano, even though the etude is written at piano, I need to practice it at a comfortable dynamic so I actually
Exactly.
know what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Right
Yeah.
now, if you would have asked me that 7 or 8 years ago, I would just said, okay, Delacluse 6, first section for 10 minutes at quarter note equals 70. To some people, you think, oh, that's enough information. That's nowhere near enough information because when you record, if you record yourself and you listen back, and then you go back to look at your practice log, you say, well, what did I work on during those 10 minutes? Okay, I don't know, but it still sounds wrong. Okay, what are
Right.
you going to do with that information? So
Yeah.
the reason why I get that detailed is so that when I listen to it, before I listen to whatever I've recorded, and I do that for the entire etude. Let's say I'm spending an hour on it. I have this section for those specific details. And then I'll record it. And then when I listen back, before I listen back, I go, what did I work on? Okay, I worked on the spacing of the grace notes and consistency here. What did I do? Okay, the next section I worked on the quality of my loud and soft roll, making sure I'm getting a full sound. The next thing I worked on was the consistency of those 30-second notes. And I have that listed all down. So when I listen back, I'm listening for everything, but I'm listening for those 5 to 6 things that I practiced on because those have to improve first in order for me to move on to something else in the A2. And so if those things don't improve, then I have to practice them again in the next practice session. And I know that sounds very tedious but that's the type of work you have to do because in an audition, all of those little details matter. And the repetition of those details really comes to light when you can't do it when you're nervous. Tim used to always say, everybody sounds good in the practice room.
Well, not everybody, but most
Well,
of
not
us do.
everybody, yeah, you know.
Yeah.
but that's something that kind of stuck with me. It's like, oh yeah, of course you can feel good about what you're playing when you're by yourself in the practice room because you don't have to worry about anybody listening to you. You're not under a microscope. So you need to practice like being under a microscope.
Right.
Always turn that camera on. Always turn it on video. Don't just do audio. Keep video on so you can. There might be a sticking thing that might be messing me up in the Delacluse, right? Now, let's say all of those 6 things I practice in the Delacluse sound good. Cool. I have a recording notebook and I have a practice log. So the practice log is what I'm doing that day. The recording log is what I'm listening to of what I practiced or how that improved. So I'll go Delacluse, bars 1 through 6, grace notes. How do they sound? Still a little wide, but they're getting closer. So for next practice session, make sure you do this, 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 this. And all I do, once I do that for every instrument for that one day, I listen to everything. I go through my recording log and I say, okay, what do I need to work on for Delacluse? Oh, my grace notes are still not as clean. Okay, cool. So the next day, Delacluse 6, bars 1 through 6. Let's focus specifically on the timing of those roughs and grace notes for flams instead of being so vague about making it consistent. Maybe there's a timing issue. Maybe I'm doing it too early. Maybe I'm doing it too late. And then also focusing on going to the beat. I'll have all of that written down just because I'm looking at what I'm writing based off of what I hear. And I've told string players hear this. That people are like, what kind of things do you do for practice? And I tell them, they're like, dude, that is insane. How in it you are. I was like, well, you see how many instruments we have to play? All of these skits,
Exactly. Yeah.
like all these different things. You got to break all this stuff down. It's a science
Right.
project.
Yeah. Yeah,
You
it
know,
is.
you have to think like an architect. You
Yeah.
you you survey the land that you're going to build on. And then you look around, see how it's going to work. Then you draft up all these plans. You draft out every single measurement, how many pieces of this is going to go, what angles. If that angle is off by even the smallest amount of degrees, the structural integrity of that building or that thing is toast. And you're putting lives at risk, right? You have to that's how you have to think about this stuff. Obviously, if you mess up Kiji, nobody's gonna die from that. But you know what I mean? Like it's you you got to think about it on that level. You have to have that level of specificity. Again, it's like a
Yeah.
science project. You go
Yeah.
through all of these things, you record, you analyze it, and your conclusion is, okay, that didn't work. Now let's go try something else that works, and be curious about it. So that's a long-winded answer about it, but
Well,
that's
we do lose some students when they make that realization. Like,
hmm
what?
hmm
Well, it's not for them, but for
no,
those like you that, you're really into these details because it makes you a better technician and then the bottom line is a better musician. That's what we have to do in classical music because it is about these details, whether it's dynamically or
Hmm.
whatever, the phrase, etc. It makes a difference. And obviously, again, you are an example of that. Putting forth that effort, and I'm one that goes by practice logs and I preach it.
Hmm.
Some students just don't get it. And I will say, everyone doesn't have to do it the same way, but it's a
No.
really, really useful tool. And with the modern technology of recording oneself, you have a lot to your advantage there that you got to use these things
Yeah.
because when you're on the panel, this is what you listen for. You
Hmm.
know,
Yeah.
these are the things that the consistency of your grace notes, your dynamics, all of these things. You've got to be that critical.
Yeah.
And yet, as we said earlier about the mental process, you do have to give yourself a break and have an understanding. It's not going to come overnight. It's not going to come in a week or a
Oh.
month. It takes hours and hours and hours of very meticulous, like you say, study and
Hmm.
research and playing and over and over. And to me, you show what it takes.
Yeah.
Your prime example of paying attention to these fine details can make the biggest difference.
Yeah. And I'm going to continue to use that practice log for all of this stuff we have to play here and just making
Right.
sure I can keep it all in order. Because now, as you know, being in a principal role, organization is key.
Yeah.
It helps you understand when something's off. I know why it's off because I didn't do X, Y, Z, right? Instead of being like, well, I don't know. Yeah, we'll figure it out. And even if when you're working so detailed, you're able to figure things out on the spot. Like the last thing I'll say about it is very quickly, the Ortiz piece that we had to play, it's all octaves in the right hand, and then just like an ostinato in the left. The left hand is like the spider kind of thing that we talk about on piano, and it's moving. It's very atonal. It's not really anything, but those octaves are the most important part. That's where you make the melodic line, and it's all at fortissimo. And I kept practicing, and I'm listening back, and I'm like, man, something's up with these octaves. Like sometimes I can get them, sometimes I can't. And I'm recording myself, and I'm saying, okay, I'm going to work on the accents in this on these 10 minutes, being very clear about that, whatever. And then all of a sudden, as I'm like the second or third week I'm practicing it, I'm like, oh, I know I'm missing those octaves because I'm squeezing. I'm squeezing my hand too hard, so it's
Mm.
shortening the octave.
Hmm.
So that's what I mean by also being present in the moment as you're practicing. Because that's another thing. What happens that I struggled with is like you practice very detailed, and then as soon as you record it, you're like, okay, I'm just gonna play. It's like, no, 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 no. Use your ears the same exact way you did when you're like, nope, nope. Okay, great. And then when you play it, it has to be great. Really having that in your mind. So you get to see those things in real time as they happen. But I just wanted people to understand that that's the correlation between your performance practice, in real time, right?
Yeah. Well, it needs to be that literal. That's the thing and what we do. And like you said, we have so many instruments that we have to be accomplished on and expected to present them at the highest level. So this
Yep.
is what it takes. So talking about organization and this finite detail in practicing, have you always been this way?
No, I was about to be a student to be like, yeah, no, no,
So at
no.
some point you learned, you went through this process. And so let's go back. Let's go back.
Mhm.
So when did you start music?
All right. So I formally started music in middle school band when I was 10, 11 years old.
That was percussion?
That was percussion, but even before that, I was doing West African drumming, like with different groups in around Southwest Atlanta, and that was my introduction to rhythm. That's what I wanted to do. So that's why I picked percussion in middle school. But that 10, 11 years old is when that started.
And from that point, you were not a very, let's say, organized person or a young man
Nope,
or nope.
nope.
So how did that develop? Is this a recent occurrence or this something that slowly occurred over the years as you realized you need to start getting your things together?
Slowly over the years,
Yeah.
it changes. When I'm in middle school, luckily my middle school band director, which I give him so much credit because that dude really just preached fundamentals to his students, and that really made a difference because all of us would go to high school and the high school band directors would be like, man, who taught y'all? Because y'all all have like really good like bass. We're like, this dude, man, he just really knew how to get a bunch of black kids in Southwest Atlanta to do this,
Hmm.
well. But he started us doing practice logs, and it was a grade. He was like, I need to see that you're practicing 30 minutes to an hour a day, but I need you to write it, and then I need your parents to sign it or your guardian or whatever. And then he
Hmm.
signs off on it. And I wasn't that consistent with it. I was just playing on a pad. I'm like, yeah, I practiced. He's like, yeah, you can tell me that, but I don't believe that.
Right.
So that's how that started. And then once I started to get more involved in the band in middle school and high school, I started to get these positions of being drum captain, of being section leader, of being student director, conducting the band during marching band, jazz band, symphonic band. I was the guy that did everything. So I had to make sure that with my class schedule, I had to say, okay, well, I have rehearsal. Okay, well, I have this other thing. I'll be fine. And then I'm late for a rehearsal and I'm like, okay, well, I can't do that again. So now I had to kind of write it down in a schedule that was given to me by my guidance counselor. It's like, okay, you have these classes here. I was like, okay, so I'll fit like 30 minutes of practicing in here. I'll skip lunch to go practice. Okay, I got to make sure I do this. So I would do little things like that, and it would just kind of get better and better. Like when you have to look after people, like other students, I
Hmm.
have to make sure everybody's in the band room on time so we can do our scale warm up before we go outside to do marching drills, or if it's in symphonic band, I got to make sure everybody's in so we can do our scales and warm ups so we can work on this David Maslanka piece and whatever it is. And then once I got to college, it was a very similar thing. I mean, Tim like just tuned me up, man. He tuned everybody up, but like he just kind of told us your practice has to look like the goals that you want in this music business. And that always stuck with me. And even then, my practice log back then was snare drum, 60 minutes. And that's it, right?
Yeah.
And for some reason I couldn't play anything well in lessons because he was my
Hmm.
first private teacher. I didn't
Uh-huh.
study privately until I got to college, which is always
Yeah.
surprising to people, but I just practiced a lot in middle school and high school. As long as I was moving my hands, that's all that mattered. But yeah, so it developed through all of those things. And it wasn't until maybe my third or fourth year in college to where I locked in and was like, oh, okay, now I understand how to actually practice like methodically, you know.
So, did that realization come because you started feeling and seeing and hearing the results?
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Because the thing about studying with Tim at that time, he was again like my middle school band director, where he was like, I'm not letting you pass Mitchell Peters 1 out of the blue book until you can play a role. And I spent 4 months on that one A2, man. 4 months. Oh, man. 4 months. It was from August to around November. I'll never forget it. When he finally passed me on, it felt like, oh, like just, oh my God. But he made me realize that's the type of work that it takes to just be a professional in music. I didn't want to play in orchestras at that time. I wanted to be a
Hmm.
music educator.
Right.
I wanted to be a band director, but I wanted to be good at my instrument. So understanding, getting past that first hurdle was a big shift in my mind. So whatever I did these past 4 months, everything can't take 4 months.
Yeah.
So yeah, to answer that question, absolutely. The results of that practice were definitely inspired the next wave of whatever that was.
Yeah.
You know,
So you did 4 years with him,
five, the
5 years.
5 years in my undergrad with him. Yeah.
Okay. What was next?
Next was USC. That's
Ah,
when I came out here and I applied for 3 grad schools, the University of Maryland to study with Javon Gilliam and Eric Shin at the time, CIM to study with Paul Yancic and Richard Weiner and Mark Damalakis. And then I met Joe at the Aspen Music Festival the summer of my last year. And USC wasn't even on my radar, but I saw him play and we talked a bunch. And I was like, he reminds me a lot of Tim in the way he talks about music and the way he plays timpani and how it influences the ensemble. They obviously they use different techniques, different sticks, but like that was a moment where I was like, oh, I can hear what a timpanist is supposed to sound like,
mm-hmm.
by comparing notes. And so I talked to Joe. I said, hey, man, like, what is grad school looking like? And he said, oh, well, we actually have our TA leaving, so this is a good time if you want to audition. And I got the assistantship, and that's all she wrote.
So
Um,
were you focusing or looking more towards a timpani job at that point, or not
oh, yeah.
necessarily?
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
Even now, like, my heart breaks because I'm like, man, I don't really get to play timpani. I mean, that's an instrument. I fell in love with that instrument because of Tim. And, Joe was also an extension of that. And the other reason why I love that instrument so much is because it really influences how you play percussion. I tell students all the time that if you want to get good at playing cymbals and triangle, you need to work on your timpani playing. Because I had a moment of realization So I did USC for a year, auditioned for the fellowship. It was brand new. That's when I started the fellowship a year later. And during my fellowship time, I really had to manage my time really well with the rehearsal schedule, performance schedule, my practice, audition schedule, all these different things. So I like lived here. Like I literally slept on Perry's couch, the pull-out couch back here during a
I've
winter
heard
break.
stories. I've
Oh, you
heard the
already know.
stories. Yes.
You already know. So I was doing a bunch of things, and I was working on some timpani stuff, and we had to play Mahler 1 and 2 with Gustavo, and I got assigned the triangle and tam tam parts. And there was a moment I went to play the triangle, and it felt exactly like I was playing like one of those soft notes in the soft note in Beethoven's Third Symphony. Bum bum beep bum bum do. But I'm like, and I just kind of mimicked what I would do on the timpani on that triangle. And the
Hmm.
sound that I got was just mind blowing. I had never played the triangle like that. So then
Hmm.
I doubled down and played more timpani, practiced it for auditions or whatever, and started going to cymbals, doing the same thing. How can I figure out when the instrument is like collapsing on itself? How do I not allow it to do that? How do I not impose myself on it so much to where I can let it breathe? So yeah, I've always wanted to be a timpanist.
So you mentioned the LA Phil's Fellowship Program, and you were amongst the first in that
Yes.
program. Now looking back, how do you look at that experience in getting you to where you are today?
Oh, it was the single-handedly the most important thing that could have happened to my education. Like it was an honor and a privilege to be a part of it, and I treated it just like I was in school. As you know, you've heard the stories. I mean, if you talk to Matt, you talk to Perry, you talk to anyone else in the orchestra, I essentially set a standard, like of how this is supposed to go. And, I said to myself, this is an opportunity people would kill for. So I'm gonna practice. I'm gonna practice like I would kill for it.
Yeah, you're
You know.
taking advantage of an opportunity that has been given to you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And of course people, talking about me and stuff and be like, oh, well, Wes is only there because of this and this. I was like, okay, cool. Be that as it may, none of y'all are gonna outplay me because I'm gonna like get this done. Like
Yeah.
I lived on that stage, man. I lived
Hmm.
in these practice rooms. I lived
Yeah.
in this room.
Yeah.
Like when I tell people that, they really don't understand. Like to the point where when I first started, the security guards would be like, "Hey, we got to lock up, so you got to leave." Within the first couple months, they were like, "Hey, just lock up when you're ready to go." Or even I'll give you another example. I would go on stage. They're technically not supposed to allow us to go on stage to practice per union rules when you're with, that kind of union. It got to a point where they were like, Wesley, you got to leave the stage. Once it goes dark, it goes dark. And I'm like, cool. Fast forward a year later, we're finishing rehearsal. Hey, Wesley, what instruments do you want out here?
Very good.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, I mean, to
Yeah.
anybody, students that are listening to this, understand that if you're doing the work, somebody's watching you, and people want to help people that are trying to help themselves.
Right.
They really are, and that is the testament to my life in music. That is if I had one thing to say about my life in music, it is that. It
Yeah.
is I put everything I had into this thing. Other people saw it and said, I want to help this kid.
You're showing commitment and dedication to what is given to you. That means a lot. That's one of the things that's really hard to obtain, or hard to teach, hard to,
Yeah,
either a student really wants to do it or they don't, perhaps. And it doesn't have to do with talent. It just, how hard are you willing to work at it? How much sacrifice
yeah.
are you willing to do? Yeah.
Yeah, it takes that. I mean, and then people are inspired by that. I've had sound engineers come up to me, and they'll be like, "Man, we hear you practicing all the time." I'm like, "Yeah, I'm sorry. I know it's annoying." And they're like, "No, dude, that's cool. That's just like so awesome to see." You're like
Yeah.
11:45 at night after everybody's left after a concert, and you're still in there banging away. Like that's just so cool to see that people that are professionals like dig in like that. I was like,
Yeah.
"Yeah,
Yeah.
why not?"
Yeah.
It's like my life's work. But
You're
yeah,
not running home to play, and excuse me for saying this for those that do this, but you're not running home to play your video game or,
no,
which, you need a relief. For
yeah, you
some
do.
people, that's a relief. But, Wesley's making sure he gets in his time. And
Absolutely.
this is where it pays off. So now, at a certain point, the fellowship program ends. And then you continue to play extra with the Phil and
Hmm.
do tours and whatever. I'm sure that's been a continuation from when you're in the
Hmm.
fellowship program. How is that factored in to where you are now? Just the repertoire, the experience of seeing how a professional orchestra and the musicians, how they interact with each other, what their schedules are like. How's that
Mhm.
been for you?
It kind of allows me to see myself doing it. It's like, what would it look like
Mm,
for me? How do I put myself in these people's shoes? How do I manage like home life with this? How do I manage the teaching schedule? Longevity. I would talk to people who had been in the orchestra for 10, 20, 30 years, and I'm saying, okay, how do you, like obviously you're not practicing the same as you did when you won the job, because the repertoire is the same, but like how do you keep yourself inspired and motivated to continue to love your instrument and play it a specific way? That's what I would just ask all of those types of questions. I would just be around. I would talk to Gustavo. I would talk to Joe. I'd talk to Matt, Jim. I'd talk to other principal players. I'd talk to section players, anyone who was willing to talk to me about these things.
right.
And it's interesting to hear how people talk about music, how people think about the job. The language that people use when they're describing this stuff is very important because it makes you realize that, oh, maybe I need to look into things a lot deeper so I can speak about the music the same way this person is
Hmm.
doing it. That's one thing I've taken the experience of being in front of these types of conductors, specifically Gustavo. And I told this to somebody the other day. They're like, man, what makes him so special? And I'm like, the thing that makes him so special is that the way he speaks about the music is from such an informed place, and the timing in which he disseminates that information is even more important. Because we have conductors that'll come and, as soon as the rehearsal starts, they want to give you a history lesson or they want to give you a lecture or they want to show you that they know everything about this piece. And it's like, okay, we love that. Thank you. How is this helping us play better? And last week we did Mahler's Second Symphony. And he goes, there's a moment in the first movement, he's rehearsing with the bass clarinet and oboe. And he's like, yeah, it just needs to have a little more longing, has to yearn more. Then he goes to the strings and says, let's start in this section. And then he stops and he goes, Mahler went bankrupt when he wrote this piece. Like he put everything he had and he paid for the orchestra, the venue, all this other stuff. He's given us all that kind of information of saying everything he wrote in this piece has to have such a strong meaning. You are betting on yourself. You are bearing your soul because you're putting everything you have in this. Because if this doesn't work, you have nothing left. And you hear stuff like that, and the orchestra plays completely different. And so I'm thinking to myself, how do I get to a point where I can speak about the music in that way? How do I get to a point where I can play the music that way? Right. And then how do I do that for a long period of time? Like some
Hmm.
principal players like Tom Hooten or Nathan Cole or all these different people. And I'm like, how are they still playing this way and getting these sounds? Oh, because they know the music on such an intimate level. They know their instrument on such an intimate level, getting closer. That's why when I won the job 2 weeks ago, the first thing that came into my mind is I'm just inspired to keep practicing. I'm inspired to just get deeper and connect more to my instrument because now I have to. Because now people are coming to see the assistant principal percussionist of the LAFL play, and that sets a precedent, and I have to set a standard or keep the
Hmm.
standard high. But now it has to keep going because now students are going to be coming to see me and saying, "Okay, this is how the LAFL does it."
Right.
Oh, you know.
Yeah.
And you have to take that very, very seriously. So to answer your question in long form, yes, all of those experiences really, really have impacted how I saw myself in this career and if I wanted to do it or not for the next however many years. It's very
Yeah.
important, very, very important.
What a hell of a journey, man.
I tell you, I tell you, man, and it's not stopping.
Did you see this coming?
No.
You hoped for it, though. It was a dream. Yes.
Yes, it was. But
Yes.
it's when it finally materializes, you're just kind of like, oh, I mean, I was ready to not win this and go back to the practice room to shed for the next audition because that was my life for
Right.
10 years. How many years did it take? I took my first professional audition at 20. I am 31. 11 years and 27 auditions later.
27. Wow. That's the
27.
magic number. Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
my magic number. And if I did it all over again, I wouldn't change anything.
Well, Wesley, congratulations on your journey. And like I said, welcome to part two. This is your new journey now.
Oh, yeah.
And I do have to say that ABOP just wishes you the best in all your endeavors.
Thank you.
And we thank you for being an ABOP mentor. And if time permits, we love to have you continue working with our proteges, whether it's one-on-one, master classes, whatever time permits, man.
Absolutely. Now you can bring them to the hall and I will be here. I will show them the great picture of Raynor, Chuck Delancey, Mitch,
Oh, wow.
and Perry.
Yeah.
Oh
Well, the
man.
legacy continues, man. And is your photo up there?
Not yet. Not
It
yet.
will
Now
be.
it
It
will
will
be.
be.
It
Will
will
be.
be.
Just think about that, man. It's amazing. So,
It is. Thank you.
well, thank you for sharing this. We will get you back again just to see how it's going, what your new perspective will be. Because things change. They will change for the better, as in you
Right.
get yourself situated in. And,
Hmm.
don't forget to invest. Oh, see, I've already forgotten. 503B? Is
Yes, I
that the
already
right?
have. I
Yes,
already
yes.
have.
That's the one tip I would give you. Make sure
Yes.
you invest in that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I did when I was in the fellowship too. I was like, yep, we're putting money in already.
There you go. All right, Wesley. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Raynor.
That concludes this episode with Wesley Sumpter. By the way, I was referring to the 403B retirement plan offered by many nonprofits to their employees, not 503. My mistake. A special thank you to our supporters and sponsors of ABOP's mentorship program. Our corporate sponsors include Black Swamp Percussion, Cooperman, Freer Percussion, Innovative Percussion, InSound Mallets, Majestic Percussion, Marimba One, Malatech, Remo, Savian, Vic Firth, and Zildjian. ABOP is a nonprofit. Your donations are tax deductible. Check out our website, www.abop.us, for information on how you can contribute. Please follow our podcast and spread the word about ABOP. We greatly appreciate your support. I am Raynor Carroll, and we are the Alliance of Black Orchestral Percussionists, ABOP. Thank you for listening.